portion Chukat, we read about one of the most mysterious commandments in the Torah, the laws of the red heifer, what's called Parah Adumah, which was used to purify those who had come into contact with death. We also read about the passing of Miriam, the disappearance and restoration of the well, Moses striking the rock instead of speaking to it, the passing of Aaron, and the Israelites' continued journey through the wilderness. At its core, the portion confronts one of humanity's deepest questions. How do we relate to death, impurity, and the possibility of returning to clarity and connection? The word in Hebrew for impurity, tum'ah, comes from the word timtum, stupidity, purity, ta'ara, te'iru. In Hebrew, clarity. So impurity relates to a level of stupid consciousness. Ta'ara, purity, represents clarity. And if we think about our lives, when we're confused, when our mind and our heart are unable to experience and see, what is the level of impurity? When do we actually have clarity? When do we actually have an open heart and open mind, clarity, understanding, and certainty? How do you move toward ta'ara, towards te'iru, brightness and clarity? A person takes upon himself throughout lives levels of tum'ah, levels of confusion, level of impurity. But if we had to ask or focus on what is the greatest reason, why are we confused, in doubt, in fear, in darkness, and closed? What is the real root? The Kabbalists teach that the root, avi avot tum'ah, the real root is the concept of death. You talk to people even in the most basic level. Why are you not spiritual? Why don't you believe in a creator? The real reason, the root of all lack of connection and consciousness is the fact a person sees, well, death happens. There's life, which we all see, and then it ends. And at the root of all lack of clarity is the fact that we live in a world that is imbued with the concept of death. Of course, at its ultimate, God forbid, when somebody sees someone they know leave the physical world, and within that itself, it brings a level of timtum, a level of lack of clarity, of closing of the heart and the mind. For some people, it's so extreme that they have zero connection to the light of the Creator, or even to the potential possibility of the light of the Creator because of it. And for the rest of us, let's be very clear. No matter how spiritual you are, the fact that you and I unfortunately live in a world where physical death occurs is the cause of any and all of our residual, continuing lack of clarity and lack of certainty. That is physical death. If we understand that any lack of clarity that we have, any doubt that we ever have, any closing of our heart, of our mind, any lack of teirut rather than moments of clarity, when everything makes absolute sense, when we understand everything, when it's so clear, it depends on how involved you are in the spiritual work. What's your percentage of tum'ah versus ta'ara? What's the percentage of moments of complete confusion, darkness, pain, and so forth and so on? What's the percentage of clarity, of an open heart, of an open mind, of understanding everything? Every person is at a different percentage, but the root of all tum'ah, the root of all stupidity, the opposite of consciousness, is the fact that we live in a world of physical death. On a deeper level, what is the spiritual tum'at met? What is the spiritual impurity of death? It's the fact that a person thinks that he or she is disconnected from the source of life. That's death. If you had certainty, if you had consciousness all the time that you are connected, if you experienced every second of your life with the awareness, I am connected to the source of life, you would be living a very different life. How could there be sadness? How could there be doubt? How could there be any confusion? I'm connected to the source of all life. But when doubts, timtum, tum'ah, which is the opposite of consciousness, enters, is when you don't feel, when you don't know that you are connected to the source of life. Your consciousness influences your experience. So if in your mind you're not connected to the source of life, your experience will be that you're not connected to the source of life. And that is worse. It is an effect of the world of death within which we unfortunately still live. But the spiritual tum'at met, the spiritual impurity of death, the spiritual reason why we have moments of tum'ah, of timtum, of stupidity, of doubt, of fear, is because we're not yet able to live with a consciousness at all time. I am connected to the source of life. That's what this portion is all about. How can I live the world of tum'at met, where a person forgets and doesn't experience life with the clarity, I am connected to the source of life. It's a constant reality. If you're ever unhappy, if you're ever disappointed, if you're ever sad, if you're ever fearful, if you ever have any doubt, obviously, what's happening in that moment? Either consciously or unconsciously, you're in the state of, I'm not connected to the source of light. Because if I were connected to the source of all life, what worry could there be? What doubt could there be? I'm connected to the source of life. Obviously, we are all overwhelmed by this tumat met, by this consciousness of being disconnected from the source of life. Therefore, so much of our spiritual work is a struggle. There were Kabbalists who, by reading one letter of the Zohar, were able to create miracles, were able to change everything. For most of us, it doesn't really happen all the time. Why? Because our world, whether we see it or not, unfortunately manifests itself even in physical ways that the world is only now beginning to recognize. But we are living in a world where everywhere you turn, there is a voice saying, you're dead. You're not connected to the source of life. Everywhere you go, there is a force, a weight of this world of death coming upon you, saying you're not connected to the source of life. It's not like you think you have a choice. No. This is a world of tumat met. This is a world where everywhere you go, everywhere you sit, everywhere you are, there's that heaviness of death. There is that heaviness of feeling that you are not connected to the force of life. It's not a choice. It's the reality of this world. No wonder we live with so much fear, doubt, worry, sadness, and darkness.
If you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Book now with me one-to-one session in angel coaching and communication coaching. To learn more, email or DM me. Enjoy the video.
In the time of Moses, you could be in the same room with Moses, and suddenly it all became clear to you. There is no tumat met. There was the potential to remove that. Even 2,000 years ago, they wouldn't even study if they were unable to remove from themselves the impurity of death, because they knew that trying to draw real consciousness into this world of death is so difficult. It's such a struggle. This is the portion in which we can tackle the collective tumat met of the world and our own. The reason why the world is heavy for us, for consciousness, for connection, for the direct knowledge that I am connected to the source of life, Kabbalists explain that when you quote someone, you need to see him standing in front of you and teaching it. So when you read the Zohar, you should not simply be reading or scanning the Zohar. You should be seeing Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, his soul, his light, standing in front of you and teaching it. Why do we study? It's not because we want more information. It's because we need the Tara, the purity, meaning the shining consciousness that can come through our connection to the Zohar and to the teaching. When we use the same words the Kabbalists used, that in itself is the Tara. It is the purification. It is the elevation from the consciousness of death, from the consciousness of being disconnected from the light of the Creator. Also, when listening to the Torah reading on Shabbat, you should envision the light of the Creator speaking these words directly into your soul. Then it brings Tara, then it brings clarity, consciousness, and a true sense of connection. If we don't see it that way, it greatly diminishes the amount of Tara, of Teirut, of clarity and brightness that we receive. Kabbalist Rabbi Bar Chana has a whole section where he tells fantastical stories, whether they physically happened or not. More importantly, these stories contain great secrets within them. And one of them contains a teaching of consciousness that is another tool to break away from the tumat met. It's not easy teaching to live by, but hopefully we will be inspired to understand that this is the divider, whether I can live my life with 100% consciousness, shining, teirut, or still struggle with doubt, fear, and being met, disconnected from the source of life. I'm going to read these Kabbalist words, and I want you to envision him teaching you this story right now. And hopefully, may the secrets within it be revealed. Amar Rabba Bar Chana zimna chada ava ke'azlinan besfinata. One time he was traveling. He often traveled in the desert and spent a great deal of time journeying through nature. On one occasion, he was traveling on a boat. V'chazana leho kavra. I didn't know it was a great fish. There was some sort of sea creature that was resting. De'atva le'achlata agvei. The sand had covered him up. So all I saw, Rav Bar Chana said, was sand. I didn't realize there was a great sea creature resting beneath the sand. V'kedach az ma'aloi. He had been there for so long that there was also green grass growing on top of this sea creature. So he assumed it was land. V'salkinan. So I left my boat, stepped onto what I thought was land, and started cooking. It got so hot that the sea creature was obviously annoyed by the heat coming from my cooking. So he flipped over, and if my boat hadn't been so close to me, I would have drowned. Interesting story. What's the secret? Rabbi Bar Chana is telling us that there are two ways to live in this world. The ocean represents the totality of our world. The fake sand covering the real fish represents one way of living in this world. Unfortunately, as an effect, the Tum'at Met, the false consciousness that pervades our world, we become part of this world and think we are standing on firm ground. Think about where you are right now. Do you have any doubt about where you're sitting right now? No, I'm sitting on this floor. Everything is fine. But if there is an earthquake, God forbid, when I need to think about save myself, I think about the Creator. But in this moment, I'm sitting on solid ground. There's nothing to worry about right now. Maybe in a minute or in an hour something happens. Then, how do I connect? But in this moment, no, because we are part of this world. What seems stable is stable. And if it's not stable, we'll deal with it spiritually, hopefully. But what seems stable is stable. What Rabbi Bar Chana is telling us, and this is the beginning of the secret of how we are going to separate ourselves from the prevailing Tum'at Met, from the prevailing stupidity of a lack of consciousness, of, again, at the core, the source of the thought that I am at any point disconnected from the light of the Creator. You can't live in this world, because if a person lives in this world, if he is part of this world, then he's a part of Tum'at Met. The stupid consciousness is this world. The only way to have te'iru, clarity, constantly, is to live here, but not to be part of it. We want to live here. There's work for us to do, but not to become a part of it. Not to base our way of living on the thought that everything is okay right now because the person, for example, just came back from the doctor and thank God there's a good report. So that's why they feel healthy. Or they came back from their accountant and the business is going well. So that's why they're happy. Or they're sitting here on a firm ground and that's why they feel comfortable. What does all of that mean? It means that I'm depending on this world. I'm depending on this floor or on the accountant or on whatever it is that exists in this world. To the degree that that's where my stability comes from, I'm of this world. And to the degree that the individual is of this world, the Tum'at Met, the prevailing heaviness of death, has to touch them. Has to. So Rav Bar Chana reveals to us a great secret. He says, listen, I thought I was standing on firm ground. I found a place where I was stable, where I could cook, where I could live, where I could eat. But what happened to him in that moment? Why did he have to cook? Why didn't he simply stand there and then have the creature tilt him over? No, because the more he became invested in the thought, I've been in the boat for so long, I really want to be on stable land. I found it. And then he started becoming even more attached to it. I'll cook here. I'm going to have a meal here. The more he became part of this world, the more death was coming toward him. The Maharal and the Gaon of Vilna explain that the boat represents the book of the Zohar. When he knew, I need the Zohar, we should never be far away from it, from the book of the Zohar. Why? Because the only reason I'm standing here on firm ground is not because this wood floor is strong, or the reason a person feels healthy is not because the doctor just told them they're healthy. But if I know that the only reason I'm able to stand here for 1 second is because I have my serving boat next to me, my saving boat next to me, which is the book of the Zohar, which represents our spiritual connection, the light of the Creator, that's why I'm able to stand here. And that's why I'm healthy. Thank God. That's why a person has sustenance. That's why everything is going as it should. Then a person is not living in this world. Then a person is living in the Zohar. A person is living in the light of the Creator. A person is actually living in his own connection with the light of the Creator. A constant connection to the source of life. But it has to be true. So we want to ask ourselves, how much are we of this world? And this is hard and very, very difficult work, because even if what I'm saying is clear and a person is inspired, hopefully, and desires it, in a second it's going to go away. In a second you're going to close this video and you're going to become part of this world, and you're going to think the reason I'm able to walk on the sidewalk is because somebody beautifully built a sidewalk for me to stand on. And the reason why I'm able to stand straight is because, bli ayin hara, the doctor told me everything is fine. The more a person buys into the firmness of this world, into the stability of this world, the more they become part of this world. And now we know the effect of becoming more and more part of this world. It is tum'at met. It is the prevailing weight of death. God forbid physical death. More importantly, spiritual death. Again, the thought comes in. You're being triggered. I'm not connected to the light, to the source of everything. In this moment, the only way out, says Rav Bar Bar Chana, is if I'm not living my life wrapped in this physical clock, but with a consciousness that the reason I'm living, the reason I have health, the reason I have sustenance, the reason I have blessings is because of my connection to the light of the Creator. And I have to keep that close. What is close? Of course, it helps to have the book of the Zohar physically close, but most importantly, to keep it consciously close. I'm not stable because I'm of this world or because of this floor. If you're honest, most of us think that's why we're stable. That's why everything is okay. No, we have to divorce ourselves from that. And that's why there's a great teaching that the Zohar repeats and the Kabbalists repeat. En divrei Torah mitkayimim ela al mi shememit atzmo alea. Which literally, from the first word of this portion, means that a person cannot be connected to the words of life unless he or she kills himself or herself spiritually. It's a very strange statement, but now we understand. We have to, and this is the work, and it's not easy work. If you truly understand it, we have to spiritually kill our life of this world. What does that mean? It means reminding ourselves 1,000 times a day. The reason I'm able to stand here is not because the ground is strong or the doctor told me I'm healthy. It's because I have my boat, literally the book of the Zohar, my saving boat, my connection to the light of the Creator. The light of the Zohar, my consciousness that I am connected in this moment to the source of life. That's why I'm alive. That's why I'm standing. That's why I'm able to walk. That's why I'm able to eat. That's why I have food, and so on and so forth. There has to be, and it's a strange concept, a kind of spiritual killing in order to have life. And this is the portion to ask ourselves, where is my strongest attachment to the stability of this world? One of the reasons the Rav would often talk about this is because we look at our world and moving closer and closer to what's called Gmar Tikkun, the end of humanity's correction. Even the physical world seems to be becoming more and more unstable, whether it's global warming or financial systems. There's a reason, because the world has to know. Again, there are two paths to this knowledge. One path is that it simply happens and then we say, oh my God, they were right. The physical world is not going to continue forever as we see it. The financial world is not as stable as I thought it was. My bank account is not as secure as I thought it was. That's one way of what we call met, of killing our connection to the stability of this world. The other way is to do it proactively, to remind ourselves every second, as often as we can throughout the day, why am I alive? Why do I have food? Why do I have anything? Because I'm connected to the light of the Creator. That's it. And I want to spiritually kill, a strong word of course, but a necessary one, my thought. If you understand this concept, it is very, very difficult work, but it's the only way to disconnect from Tum'at Met. It's the only way to divorce ourselves, to kill spiritually within ourselves the impurity of death of this world. There is no other way. Rav Bar Bar Chana thought he was on firm land. As a matter of fact, he almost died because it was on firm land. It was the opposite. And the more certain he became that everything was fine here, that he could start cooking here and building a home here, the more death came toward him. Not only physical death, but more importantly, spiritual death. The forgetting that I am connected to the source of life. That's the only way out of Tum'at Met. It's the only way out of the stupid opposite of consciousness. Also, Miriam, the sister of Moses and Aaron, lives this physical world. During the years that they were in the desert, the miracle of water came to them through the merit, through the light of Miriam. It was called the well of Miriam that sustained them. She leaves this world and they become thirsty. The Creator says to Moses, gather the Israelites around the rock, v'dibarta, and speak to the stone. Moses goes with his staff, and rather than speaking to the stone, Moses strikes the stone. and water comes out. In this very painful moment, the Creator tells Moses, Ya'an kilo mantem bi, told to Moses and Aaron, because you did not have certainty in the light of the Creator, therefore you, Moses and Aaron, will not enter into the land of Israel. What's the secret of speaking to the stone and hitting the stone? Why was this moment that Moses lost the opportunity to enter the promised land, the land of Israel? Sometimes things are so simple that we don't understand them. Let's understand the difference between hitting and speaking. Let's say a person has a horse or a mule. You want it to go this way, but it goes the other way. What do? You hit it. Go this way, not that way. When you hit something to make it do what you want, but it doesn't want to do it, but you will still push it, and at the end he will do it because he doesn't want to do it, but he wants to satisfy you. It's a struggle. Also with a dog, you don't hit it, but you pull it. Hitting is not just the physical act of hitting. It's the forcing. It's the struggle. Something doesn't want to happen. Somebody or something doesn't want to do it. But I'm going to overpower it, either with a stick or with a leash. However, it doesn't want to do it. It's a struggle to get it go. That's hitting. Think about your life now. Hitting represents the struggle of life. You want to be in this relationship. You want to have this business deal. You want to have this joy, but it's a struggle. Sometimes I have it, sometimes I don't. It's going back and forth. That's the life of hitting. Unfortunately, think about it. Most of us, I don't want to say completely, but too often live a life of struggle. Nature is going one way and I need to force it to come the other way. Struggle. That's hitting. Interestingly, the word of dibur that is used, the Creator didn't tell Moses, tell the rock. The word in Hebrew, if you're giving somebody direction, is emor. Tell the rock to give water, but that's not what the Creator says. The dibartem el hasela. Dibur represents conversation with a rock. What does that mean? When you want somebody to do something for you and he's your friend, you say, listen, I need his favor. Can you please do it for me? It goes back and forth. Oh, it's hard for me right now. Maybe I'll do it later. You have a conversation. You go back and forth. And at the end, because you're friends and you can converse, you decide to do it together. You're not forcing him to do it for you, but because of his love, his connection to you and your conversation, you now decide together, okay, we'll do this. There are two types of lives. One is a life of struggle. Yes, you might be able to convince the bank or convince this person. They don't really want to do it. They don't really want to help. But through arguments or whatever ways of forcing them, you get them to do it. Think about life in that way. How much of your life is a struggle? That's the level of hitting the stone. Hitting the stone represents when nature or people are not really on board with you. But you force them through struggle. You force them. The dibartem el hasela, speaking, represents a person who is living in a consciousness where he or she can have a conversation with nature. What was the secret of the dibartem el hasela? And this wasn't about Moses, it was about the consciousness of the Israelites. If the Israelites had been on the level where Moses was, then he could have gone to the rock and said, listen, both you and I know we're not living in this world. There is no nature. I'm not of this world, you're not of this world. We're all connected to the source of life, to the light of the Creator. So do me a favor, right now, it will be very helpful for the light of the Creator if you poured out water. That's the conversation. Another way Moses could have done it was to go to the rock and say, the Creator is giving me the power to overwhelm you. Through struggle, Moses was going to force the stone, the rock, to pour out water. It was about the Israelites, not about Moses. The Israelites, and unfortunately many of us even today, we spoke before about the choice we have to live of this world or not to be of this world. And that the only way to remove what's called the stupidity of death, the thought that a person is not connected to the source of life, is by consistently divorcing ourselves from living as though we are of this world. When a person truly lives in that consciousness on a consistent level, then he can converse with everything because we're living in that realm. If you're talking to anything while you're of this world, it's not going to listen. You might be able at times to struggle with it, overpower it, and force it to go your way, but that's not life. It's not the way it's supposed to be. Life is supposed to be a conversation between you and everything else. Because you begin with the thought, the consciousness, I am not of this world. Like Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, he didn't need to create a miracle. He came to a river that was too wide and he needed to cross it. He said, listen, you know I'm not of this world. You know I am connected. I'm living in Teiru. I'm living in the state of Tahara with complete understanding that I'm connected to the light of the Creator every second. I need you to stop flowing for a moment. The water said, of course, stopped flowing and he crossed. About Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it says, Melumad benisim, he was learned in miracles because he was always in conversation. Not of this world. He was first not of this world, and then, of course, he could have conversations with everything. He could have conversations with the rock and with the water. He could have conversations even with a bank account, with everything, because he was not of this world. The story of hitting the stone versus speaking to the stone represents whether a person does this work or not. Moses was telling us, listen, this is where the world needs to go. Each one of us individually and the world as a whole needs to reach a state where we divorce ourselves from this world, from thinking to whatever degree that everything is okay because everything in this physical world is telling me it's okay. And instead, come to the real consciousness that the only reason everything is okay is because my boat is so close to me, the Zohar, the book of the Zohar, because my connection to the light of the Creator is constant. Then, v'dibartem el hasela, then you can start conversing. It's a different way of life. Less struggle. One of the ways to know whether you are divorcing yourself from the world is that your struggle becomes less and less. Rather than having to hit things to get them to go your way, you begin to converse. Conversing can mean, like Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, having a physical conversation with the water so that it stops flowing and allows you to walk through. But it also means living with that consciousness. When the Rav would give energy to water, the Rav would speak to the water. Because when you're not of this world, you can speak to all things and they will listen to you. You're on the same level. You're on the same wavelength. But if you're of this world and they're not, and you need them to go your way, it's going to be a struggle forever. Hopefully, we should have the merit to understand this, to receive the assistance from this portion, to begin living it, and to do the work necessary to get there. And then to live more and more in Tahara, in Teiru, in clarity, understanding, and light.